Hi viewers, this is my reading diary, and today we'll be reading The Adventures of Captain Underpants by Pilkey, Part 3. Chapter 7, A Little Blackmail. Mr. Krupp sat back in his chair and chuckled to himself for a long time. Finally, George got up the courage to speak. "Well, what are you going to do with that tape?" he said. "I thought you'd never ask," laughed Mr. Krupp. "I thought long and hard about what I should do with this tape," Mr. Krupp said. "At first I thought I'd send copies to your parents." The boys swallowed hard and sank deeply into their chairs. "Then I thought I might send a copy to the school board," Mr. Krupp continued. "I could get you both expelled for this." The boys swallowed harder and sank deeper into their chairs. "Finally, I came to a decision," Mr. Krupp concluded. "I think the football team would be very curious to find out who was responsible for yesterday's fiasco. I think I'll send a copy to them." George and Harold leapt out of their chairs and fell to their knees. "No!" cried George. "You can't do that. They'll kill us." "Yeah," begged Harold. "They'll kill us every day for the rest of our lives." Mr. Krupp laughed and laughed. "Please have mercy," the boys cried. "We'll do anything." "Anything?" asked Mr. Principal Krupp with delight. He reached into his desk, pulled out a list of demands and tossed it to the boys. "If you don't want to be dead as long as you live, you follow these rules exactly." Rules. George and Harold carefully looked over the list. This is blackmail," said George. "Call it what you like," Principal Krupp snapped. "But if you two don't follow that list exactly, then this tape becomes the property of the Horowitz knuckleheads." Chapter 8, Crime and Punishment. At 6 o'clock the next morning, George and Harold dragged themselves out of bed, walked over to Mr. Krupp's house and began washing his car. Then, while Harold scrubbed the tyres, George roamed around the garden, pulling up all the weeds and nettles he could find. Afterwards, they cleaned the gutters and washed all the windows on Mr. Krupp's house. At school, George and Harold sat up straight, listened carefully, and spoke only when spoken to. They didn't tell jokes, they didn't pull pranks, they didn't even smile. Their teacher kept pinching herself. "I just know this is a dream." At lunch, the two boys vacuumed Mr. Krupp's office, shined his shoes and polished his desktop. At break, they clipped his fingernails and ironed his tie. Each spare moment in the boys' daily schedule was spent catering to Mr. Krupp's every whim. After school, George and Harold mowed Mr. Krupp's lawn, tended his garden, and began painting the front of his house. At sunset, Mr. Krupp came outside and handed each boy a stack of books. "Gentlemen," he said, "I've asked your teachers to give you both extra homework. Now go home, study hard, and I'll see you back here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. We've got a busy day ahead of us." "Thank you, sir," moaned the two boys. George and Harold walked home dead tired. "Man, this is the worst day of my entire life," said George. "Don't worry," said Harold. "We only have to do this for 8 more years. Then we can move away to some far-off land where they'll never find us. Maybe Antarctica." "I've got a better idea," said George. He took a piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to Harold. It was an old magazine ad for the 3D hypno ring. "How's this going to help us?" asked Harold. "All we have to do is hypnotize Mr. Krupp," said George. "We'll make him give us the video and forget this whole mess ever happened." "It's a great idea," said Harold. "And the best part is we only have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for delivery." Chapter 9, 4 to 6 weeks later. After 4 to 6 weeks of back-breaking slave labor, grueling homework assignments, and humiliating good behavior at school, a package arrived in George's mailbox from the Little Wise Guy Novelty Company. It was the 3D hypno ring. "Hallelujah!" cried George. "It's everything I ever hoped for." Let me see," said Harold. "Don't look directly at it," warned George. "You don't want to get hypnotized, do you?" "Do you really think it'll work?" asked Harold. "Do you think we can amaze our friends, control our enemies, and take over the world, just like the ad says?" It better work, said George, or else we just wasted $4. Chapter 10, the 3D Hypno Ring. The next morning, George and Harold didn't arrive early at Mr. Crop's house to wash his car and reshingle his roof. In fact, they were even a little late getting to school. When they finally turned up, Mr. Crop was standing at the front door waiting for them, and boy was he angry. Mr. Crop escorted the boys into his office and slammed the door. "Alright, where were you two this morning?" he growled. "We wanted to come over to your house," said George, "but we were busy trying to figure out the secret of this ring." "What ring?" snapped Mr. Crop. George held up his hand and showed the ring to Principal Crop. "It's got one of those weird patterns on it," said Harold. "If you stare at it long enough, a picture appears." "Well, hold it still," snarled Mr. Crop. "I can't see the darn thing." "I have to move it back and forth," said George, "or else it won't work." Mr. Crop's eyes followed the ring back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. "You have to stare deeper into the ring," said Harold. "Deeper, deeper, deeper, deeper." You're getting sleepy," said George. "Very sleepy." Mr. Crop's eyelids began to droop. "I'm so sleepy," he mumbled. After a few minutes, Mr. Crop's eyes were closed tight and he began to snore. "You are under our spell," said George. "When I snap my fingers, you will obey our every command. Snap!" "I will obey," mumbled Mr. Crop. "Alright," said George. "Have you still got that videotape of me and Harold?" Yes, mumbled Mr. Crop. "Well, hand it over, Bob," George instructed. Mr. Crop opened a large filing cabinet and opened the bottom drawer. He reached in and handed George the videotape. George stuffed it into his backpack. Hal took a different video out of his backpack and put it into the filing cabinet. "What's that video?" asked George. "It's one of my little sister's old Boomer, the Purple Dragon sing-along videos." "Nice touch," said George. "To be continued." Well, that's the end of chapter 10 and part 3 of this video and book. So let's hope you enjoyed it, and like and subscribe if you did. But in the meantime, peace out.